start. Let me just share this. Yeah. Do let me know if it's visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the topic of my talk. I'm talking about how a person moves once they are a fresh graduate, how they move to the industry, and I really want to explore today how the theory, the knowledge that we learn in college, where does it apply to? Where does it apply within job, and where do you have to start learning new things on the job itself? And I want to trace a path between the two. So let's look at the agenda for today. I'll just start with a quick personal introduction. I want to describe a day at my job, a typical day at my job as a software engineer, skills that my job calls for. Since I am a developer and I work on a product, I want to also describe what the typical workflow for an issue looks like, how it comes to us, how we resolve it, how we close it, stuff like that. After that, I want to talk about the viability of hitting the ground running, of being job ready day one, right out of college. Is it possible? What is in your favor? What's not in your favor? Moving beyond that, yes, talk about skills that you can learn inside college, within college before even starting a job. Whereas some things that you can only learn on the job. We'll even discuss that. After that, I want to talk about the sort of mindset you have as a college student versus the mindset you need to keep as an employee later on, as a worker, basically. And after that, I want to look into a few personal anecdotes about lessons I've learned over the last 2 years working, stuff I've learned from my teammates, from seniors, and the rest is simply talking about the experience, some of the mistakes I've made, some of the challenges I've faced getting out of my comfort zone right out of college, doing things I've never done before, and beyond that, yes, a few final musings, and we'll move on to a question and answer session. So yeah, let's get started. So yes, here's a little about me. My name is Angad Singh. As I said, I graduated from SRMIST from the Computer Science Engineering branch in 2020. Currently, I'm working as an associate software engineer at Volante Technologies, and I'm a Java developer for a product that helps banks process payments. And the product is called Volante Designer, and it allows you to read, write, validate, or store financial data that's coming in while the payment is occurring. So then when payments are conducted at scale, banks have to do this a lot. So essentially we design workflows which are as simple as dragging and dropping UI components, but it generates the Java code for these at the click of a button. So that's what makes it special. In the future, yes, I'm looking to pursue a master's degree in computer science. And also, since I love the field quite a bit, I would like to explore my interests and find new topics to work on. So I've been working. So yeah, here's a bit of a pitch about what my day looks like. Every day doesn't look like this. Certain days could go entirely in calls, certain days could go entirely in analysis. But if you look at this, you would see that a lot of the day is already going into calls. There are a few different types of calls. There are a few stand-up calls, which are for taking a review of the tasks that we've done maybe the previous day or the previous week, and also to discuss within the team members what we'll be working on later on in the day or the week, essentially. Apart from that, there are calls where we discuss with the quality assurance team, the QA team, regarding issues that might be occurring in the product, and we take a review, we assess whether this behavior is expected or not, and then we give them we have a frequent back and forth where we give them acknowledgement of the issue and the fact that we're working on it, or it's not reproducible. We give them updates such as that. So that's why the calls happen. And last few calls happen simply because a teammate of yours is working on an issue and need to debug it together. So that's another type of call which can happen. Apart from that, in my own time, I do like to take some time in the morning to assess what I have done before personally, split my task into easier chunks and plan it out like what I'll be doing today. And yes, the rest of the day does go into analyzing some part of the code base, implementing something, testing something, researching something. So yeah, but as I said, every day is not productivity max. Some days can be really good. You could have an entire feature looked out in a day, but on some days you could just get stuck at one bug, and there is progress after that, but it does take time. So essentially, this is just like a mock representation of what a typical day at my job is. So coming ahead over here, these are a few skills that my job calls for on a daily basis. Obviously, when I get a task which has some specific software or some specific tech stack to work on, then I have to learn that. But on average, working in a product-based company, I expect that you yourself will also be using these tools or very close variants of these tools. So if we first talk about Atlassian Jira, it is a very useful issue tracking software. Essentially, whenever an issue pops up and there are, let's say, 15 members in the development team, 30 members in the testing team, and even like 10 members in the product implementation, the PI team is the team which connects with the customers. So we need to keep track of this issue that has occurred, and we need to have acknowledgement that it's being fixed, it has been fixed, it has been tested, and so on and so forth. So that's where Jira comes in, and you can manage your entire project. So everyone's aware of the status of the entire project and its key features as a whole, and the issues being solved. After that, we come to version control systems. So Git is the version control system we're talking about here. This is something which I say everyone should know. Whether you run it in college or on the job, that's a separate thing. But Git allows you to basically track versions of the files that you're working on by creating a local repository, and you can roll back to an earlier version if your current files aren't working, etc. And you can also keep track of who has made changes, especially in a collaborative environment. This work on the same code, so that's where Git comes in. GitLab, Bitbucket, and GitHub are simply host providers. As in, they provide a remote repository where you can also safely keep the code, and you can sync that local your remote repository with the local repository in your own system. So essentially, it's a safe way to store your code and collaboratively work with others in a team, essentially. Coming ahead, yes, I frequently, this is something else I do, which I did not really know before college, but when we make setup files to install our software, Install4j is what we use to bundle all the new distributables. So in this, we make installers for Mac, for Windows, for Linux. That's another thing here. IntelliJ IDEA is that it's an IDE, it's an interactive development environment. It's similar to Eclipse for Java. And we run our entire code base on this, and we frequently use it to debug issues, essentially because you need to go into the code while it's running and check what's going on. So that's where IntelliJ comes in. This obviously might differ according to the company you're working at and what tech stack they use, but you will be using something similar to this. Another skill here is writing clean and maintainable code. Now, if those of you who are doing competitive programming or online, essentially you do program in your free time, you might notice a key difference that when you write code for a company, you're not writing just to pass a few test cases or just to run it for the day. You need code that a developer 3 to 4 years, even after you're gone from the company, say, is able to read that code, maintain it, update it, etc. So this is an important skill. Write once and then just maintain beyond that, because code once written has to be maintained for, let's say, 20 years. And that's why readability is important. And just simply getting the answer isn't enough. You need to have maintainable code. That's the key concept here. The next one is coming from computer science. Now, yes, you would have learned a certain language to be C++, Java, object-oriented. You obviously do cover data structures and algorithms in your second and third year, and OS concepts such as multi-threading, memory leaks, the heap, the stack. These things you do learn in college, and they are in theory in front of you, but you don't really understand where they apply until you get into the real world. I didn't understand this properly until the first time I had to fix a memory leak, and I realized, oh, this is what they were talking about. So that was really interesting. Finally, yes, beyond all of this, beyond what you've learned in college, you have to be open to working with new tasks and technologies, because anyhow, the industry moves so fast that something new comes up and your product calls for it to be included. So where you have RESTful services, you have service discovery, protocol buffers. These are a few examples of the things which I hadn't worked on extensively before, but did work on now and have got some experience with. And finally, yes, good communication and documentation skills. I say these are also just as important as any of the other factors here, because time is a critical resource in your hands, and you want to get work done efficiently. So if there is a communication gap, there will be issues. There will be there are delays there simply because the point didn't get through properly. So then when you communicate well, when you document your findings well, that's when tasks move ahead, because everyone's collaborating, but everyone needs the right information in their hands to work with it. So that's where we talk about documentation. And even for the long term, as I said, that you might not be at the company, and when you document a feature that you worked on, someone else later on can pick that up, whether it's the user or whether we do internal developer documentation. Someone can pick it up much later also and understand it. That's the point of documentation, not to write a quick undetailed paragraph about what it does. You need to be thorough about, because I myself have seen incomplete documentation, which meant that I needed to go back and do a deep dive. So it's all about sustainability for the long term. Yeah. So now this is an interesting. This is essentially what you've come here for. What the typical workflow for an issue looks like. So these are the 4 key steps here. You have a new task being given or an issue being raised. You have the analysis and learning phase. You have the implementation, review and testing phase. And finally, you have issue tracking and documentation. So let's talk briefly about all 4 of these. So when we talk about a new task being given or an issue being raised, this can come in a variety of ways, right? So a product is always changing, and whether this may be to fix a security issue which has recently been found in the industry, or to upgrade a dependency, or to simply add a new feature, this could come in a variety of ways. And secondly, like another way is if the QA team, the testing team, quality assurance team, they come up with a feature of the product that is not working as expected, maybe due to a version upgrade, maybe due to a jar upgrade, they will come to us and say, hey, this is not working. Can you look into this? And at this point, it's not known that it is an issue that we will fix or not, but it's something that we will look at. So we then in hand take it from them. We take the version of the software that is being affected. We take the steps to reproduce the issue, and we also try to reproduce the issue. Now, based on the fact that we are able to reproduce it and we see that it's a valid issue, we take it on. Yes, and then another way finally is the product implementation team, which I mentioned before. Now, these guys work very closely with the customers. They have frequent discussions with them. They are product experts in the sense that they know how to use the product very well. So if the customer has an issue, they don't come to the development team each time saying, how do we use it? They talk to the product implementation team, which says, hey, you could try to use this feature, you could use this functionality. However, if the customer does ask for something which is beyond the scope of what is already implemented, the PI team does come forward to us and say, we might need an extension to the product over here. We might need a new feature over here because the customer wants it. So it is at this time that we assess. Now, this is important. I'm trying to say this from the point of a product company. We assess whether the feature they're asking for fits within the suite of features that we are offering. Because if it is, then that is something to implement. But however, if it is something that's out of our scope, which is completely just what one customer wants, then we do not completely mold our product just for that one customer. That is why we are a product, not a service. So this is something I've noticed. Like, we don't say yes to all issues because we have to understand what is within the scope of our product and what is not. So that is how we decide whether we want to take on an issue or not. And then given this, then we start moving towards the requirement gathering phase if it is a valid issue that required to work. Yeah. So now if we talk about the analysis and learning phase, this is where I talk about gathering requirements, the functional and non-functional requirements. The functional requirements for a task are essentially what you expected to do. A word processor is supposed to be able to write, save documents, a video player plays videos like that. So those are what you see, the input and the output. Whereas the non-functional requirements are essentially everything else: your security, your data management, your resiliency, stability, all of the other factors which aren't apparent but are guaranteed along with the function are your non-functional requirements. Yeah. So at this point now, we identify the section of our code base which is to be targeted to be fixed or to be enhanced for the new feature. And given in my personal case, if I was new to the code base, I would really take some time to understand the entire module that I was working on, because in case of Java, the module, the package, the classes, the interfaces, they're all very intimately connected to each other. So while you are aiming to fix something, while you're aiming to get a new functionality running, you really don't want to break any existing functionality. That's really key over there. So that's why having an understanding how the whole thing works is better than just diving in and just making changes and you realize that you've broken the other key functions of that particular module. So this is why we do take some time to analyze and learn the module so that we're not blindly making changes and we make some informed decisions beyond this analysis. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So now we come over here to the implementation, review, and testing phase. Now, this is where once we've understood where we want to make our changes, we start writing our code. And you must understand this code is rarely ever like final or fixed because it is subject to change given many reviews. Now, whether you have a peer review, you have a review with your senior, you have a review. We have several consultants who come on and tell us what's good for the software in the long run. What's a long-term decision in terms of maintainability or viability of a particular piece of code that we're using. So beyond all these reviews, once it is assessed that yes, the changes you've done are okay, the functionality which you wanted to fix or add is working fine, that is when we say that the implementation is done. However, the job is still not done yet. So as developers, we work most intimately with the software at the source code level. So we know the ins and outs of it, which I have seen that even the QA team, the testing team may not know, which because we know certain issues which could occur, which they might not think of. So therefore, it seems antithetical, but a developer can also write test cases. And therefore, like there is this library known as JUnit, and JUnit allows you to write a set of repeatable test cases, which can be executed at any time. And I see this as a sanity check. Essentially, let us say you implement a feature and it's working, but 10 months later you add some other functionality. How do you know that you've not broken the previous functionality? That's the check here. So JUnit allows you to define 10 to 12 test cases, which allow you to rapidly check them and see if the core functionality of that module is still running fine, despite the changes or despite the bug fix. Because that is key. You don't want to, as I said on the previous slide, you don't want to break existing functionality implementing something. So that's where testing comes in on our end. Now, obviously, once this is done, you do pass this on to the testing team themselves, who have a set of test suites, which they run the software through, regression suites. And these rapidly check again for various other use cases in the business logic as well, to see that if we are inputting our data correctly, if we're parsing it correctly, if we're storing it correctly. This sort of validation is left to them beyond this, because they understand to a great degree how the product is supposed to run. And when they do find some issue with our implementation, they do get back to us and say that, hi, this is broken. We need to look at this. And then we review it, we find the bug and we patch it, etc. Yeah. So once this is done now, once this whole part of implementing is done, we move on and we generate a new build of the software. And actually, this is where the testing team comes. We generate a new build of the software and check whether in this new build our features fixed. If the issue is fixed, and if the issue is fixed, that's when we pass it on to the testing team, who then take it, test it again, and then they also put the seal of guarantee that yes, it's working, and to the best of our knowledge, we have also checked it. So this is where essentially we are coming to the end of a particular issue. And beyond this, now, if it's something that needs to be documented, especially for a new functionality, we do document it, and we add these documents to the distributables. And it's usually included in the next patch. Essentially, we have different versions, and we include these in the next patch as it comes. Yeah, so then that is essentially the workflow of how a task goes. I hope I was able to explain it sensibly. Yeah. So now I want to talk about, yes, as I mentioned, hitting the ground running and what works and what doesn't. Now, a 4-year degree is a considerable time and financial commitment, and we expect that we'll be able to contribute significantly as soon as we're out of there. But the problem is that it doesn't really always work that way, and there are a few factors that play into this. Yeah. So I do agree that your experience might be different depending upon the sector or the company or the team in particular that you join. But I want to discuss a few factors which influence this. And as you can see here, I'm trying to discuss whether a full-time degree does prepare you or not, and how does it apply to your day-to-day job. That's what we need to understand here. So if we talk about full-time degrees first, college degrees and theory courses, well, a few real-world factors are that today self-taught developers are just as likely to get roles in the industry. And companies are also therefore dropping the requirement that someone has to be from a traditional like a degree background. Yeah, so that's changing today. And 3 to 4 year commitment to a degree also has a heavy workload of academics. So you rarely get the time to actually get real world practice and real world experience during the degree. It's only after the degree that you get it. However, coming to the advantages of a degree, it provides you with a structured pathway towards the industry of your choice. It provides you with internship opportunities, like you cover all the key courses you require to say that you have expertise in that particular topic, and maybe not expertise, but at least understanding of it. And as I said, the industry is changing, but it's not there yet. Some jobs do require you to hold a particular minimum level of competency in terms of a degree, whether it's a BTech, a master's, an MBA, etc. So essentially, I do still see a degree as something that allows you to get your foot in the door, if nothing else. But talking about how this applies to your job, finally, once you're out of the theory, once you're really into the real world, it's a mixed answer essentially. Any job, any task to get at work could involve you using, let's say, 3 different concepts. Something that you may have learned in college in detail, which you know well, something that you may not have seen at all, which you still need to work on. There is no excuse that you won't work on that. And something that, yes, you have worked on in your own time, thanks to some sort of internship or some side project that you did. So, for example, like if you are having a task involving REST web services, which you have studied in theory as a concept, but then you also need to, for the client, for the front end, you need to design a web page with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is something you may have done. But once again, there could be a concept of service discovery here, which you haven't worked on before, neither have you read of before. So it's hard to say that, yes, the degree completely prepares you or does not prepare you, but that's how it is in the real job here. Secondly, yeah, the team's requirements are what's important. It's not what you know. So it's not, there's no definitive guarantee that the tasks you get will be up your alley each time. And therefore, the learning curve does not drop even once you once you end your formal education, once you end your degree. So essentially, that is essentially when you've just started your job. And you'll notice that after some time, once you get comfortable in your role, tasks that are given to you explicitly are one thing, that you have to sit and do this task, this task, this task. But you do learn to take responsibility for the entire team as a whole. If you have a release coming in, there are several key issues to be fixed. You do tend to take the responsibility on yourself that, no, I'll fix this issue, I'll fix this issue. And then you do the needful, you do the digging, and you find out what the root cause is, you fix it. And these might be issues which you find that you've never even worked on before, but you'll have to fix them, because the team requires a release and you need to push for that. So that is how it applies in the real world. It's not exactly black and white that you know it or you don't. Time and time commitments and deadlines, they actually push you into working on stuff which you may have never worked on before. But that is exactly how you learn. And finally, yes, when you work on these things, as I say, that actually gives you the day-to-day understanding of what that is like, what are the nitty-gritties, what are the issues that you might face. And that is how you decide what you want to do in the long term. That could give your career kind of trajectory that you wish to follow. Yeah. Now coming to this, these are a few transferable skills that I really believe that you can learn. So we need to talk about things that are company specific, because obviously domain knowledge or company specific knowledge is learned within the company itself. But as I said, things like Git version control, issue tracking like Jira is there, data structures and algorithms, design patterns, and best coding practices. I think these are things that you can learn without even joining a job, because this is something you should learn in your off time in college. That these are just this is just a part of the toolkit that you will use on the job every day. So these are just side tools which are good to know. And another big recommendation here is learning how to use a debugger. Now, if I guess all of you in college right now, very frequently we use print statements, right, when we're running a program to see what the value was at a particular stage. But that does not work in a large product, because you cannot do that. It is just too cumbersome. Instead, like I mentioned, IntelliJ IDEA, the IDE that I work in. So the debugger essentially allows you to run the program and then pause the program while it's running. So live while it's running, you can see the application's values which it's taking, the flow that it follows. If it throws an error, you can catch that error while it's running. So it's fascinating. So if I'm running a Java program, I get an illegal argument exception, I can run the program again with the debugger and tell it to stop exactly when it catches an illegal argument exception, which is actually great. Whereas previously, if you got an exception, you had to through the code base, understand where it might be occurring. Here, you can actually run it line by line and see where the issue occurs, and that's it. Then beyond that, you've found the root cause, and you start to see what might have changed to have caused this issue. And yes, obviously, this last point is very important in college. Whenever you have a lab, whenever you have e-lab, or you get to work on a particular thing thanks to an internship or your own side project, try to delve into it to the best of your abilities. Try to understand whether you like it or not. Look online, see what sort of community, what sort of popularity that particular tech tool enjoys. And this way you can understand your interest and aptitude in that in the long term. So I feel like these tools will serve you well no matter where you go in the field, especially if you're continuing to stay in the tech field. Now moving ahead here. Yeah. So learning about the product or service. So as I just said, those are tools which you can learn off the job before you even start. But there are certain details about a role that you can only pick up as a full-time employee, and like that is something that leads to your personal growth, which is hidden in all those responsibilities, time commitments, and learnings. And I often think back to the time when I started at Volante, right after in my third year at SRM, I did an internship, and then again in my fourth year. I think back to the work done then, and I realized how little work it was actually. It was a single task which was given to groups of 3 people, and we were working on it, and it took us a month, and we took so much time to research it and do it, and finally, yes, we did get it working. But yeah, it's now very funny to me, like considering how light the workload was then. And I think today, and a task like that, it's amazing that I can do that task myself in about a week. Whereas that time it took 3 people and a month to do it. And I hope this is not discouraging you, because it's amazing to me to understand how much I've grown and how much I've been able to take on, that I'm able to do 2-3 tasks like that at one time now. And it just represents your growth. So internships as such do not represent the workload of or work content of a full-time role. And that's a good thing, because at the time, perhaps you're not ready, but given time, given knowledge transfer, given experience which you get in the real world working on a product, that's when you understand it, and that's when your domain knowledge increases to the point that yes, you can resolve any issue at a much faster pace than when you were just an intern. So that's the main thing. And let's say you're working on a certain aspect of the product, that's what you'll know in depth. But the fact of the knowledge is you're working in a collaborative environment. So what your teammates are working on, what your seniors are working on, just because of discussions and knowledge transfer sessions, you also get to understand what they're working on, and you get a very well-rounded understanding of the entire product that you're working on. So that's something I want to say, which only applies in the job itself. You cannot learn it as an intern or even online. Really, I feel like this applies within the job itself. Okay. Now, here I want to talk about the fallacy of the student mindset. So, this first line is key here, that the team is built to be diverse and everyone shoulders a part of the workload. And we do expect that ideally we would wish that there would be multiple people working on a single feature. We could share the load, and we would assume work would get done faster. But the point of a team is that it has multiple priorities. The product itself is multifaceted. So therefore, there's an accountability to the team and ourselves to split the responsibility and take it on to ensure that there's a uniform product release with all the features that we require, not the entire team focusing on just one single feature. And in my own personal opinion, I feel like this comes from the student mindset, where in college, for the most part, everyone is give or take working on the same goals at the same time. So we expect that this might happen in the company itself, but you would be surprised to know that people who start the job at the same time, the exact same background, can have very different trajectories within the same company. So that's pretty crazy actually. And within the long term also, people have different goals, different aspirations, different aptitudes for particular logics of the company. So they might move towards that. And I have seen that personally happen within 2 years itself. So I can only imagine what happens in 10 to 15 years. So you're not walking the same path as everyone else, but that's a good thing, because for the first time, you can choose what you wish to work on. You can choose to specialize on something, and you can get better and better at it without something which you don't want to do, essentially. And that's the long-term growth I'm talking about. And therefore, as I said, some parts of the software that you work on very regularly, you will understand in great detail. Whereas something that a teammate works on, but you have seen it being worked on, you will understand as a black box. Essentially, you'll understand what it does, the input, the output, but perhaps, yes, you may not understand the in-depth workings of that. But that is fine, because this is what I'm talking about, forming a very well-rounded understanding of the entire software module, and that everyone doesn't work on the same task at the same time. So you must forge your own way forward and understand what you want to do, and then dive deep into just that. Yeah. So these are a few lessons I've learned, and guys, these are things which I did not know myself. Honestly, everything you see here has nearly been told to me by a senior during my time at Volante, or something I've learned more recently when I have been told to mentor a few new members of our team. They just joined, and I'm being told to help them, guide them around the code base, etc. So the first one is very important, is to not reinvent the wheel. Now, if you're working on a large enterprise software or basically any large code base, any key functionality is likely already implemented. So if I want to search in a string for something, or if I want to sort something, or if I want to fetch a particular directory's file path, I don't have to write a full class for this. I don't have to write a function for this, because the odds are it's already implemented somewhere in the software. So at one point, yeah, you don't want to start writing out your entire boilerplate code for this. You just want to see whether the software already offers that functionality. Code base already offers that. Use that and build on top of that. So understand how it works, but build on top of that. That is the point. Otherwise, if you're simply re-implementing base functionalities again and again, that's where we waste time. The second thing is to dive deep, understand well, but also to prioritize time. Now, as I said earlier, in the analysis phase, we do take some time to understand how our product is working, and like before we start making the changes. But at the same time, we have a deadline. We have something to release, and therefore, while you're diving deep, you must have a time constraint that at this point I will start implementing. At this point, I will start testing, and just trying to make it work instead of like taking too long just reading through code, because that also does not get you anywhere. So you must prioritize time. That's the key takeaway here. Third point is not be afraid to clarify or ask doubts to improve your understanding. And this I've seen, like, people have a hesitation to ask doubts. I think like the solution to this, as I've written here, is to ask informed doubts. Don't just simply go and say, this is not working, I'm facing this error. Look into the error, you can Google the error, you can look through your own, as I said, Jira stores issues, right? So you can look if anyone has faced the issue prior to you, that particular error. And if once you do a informed search like this, then you're able to understand what the issue is, what are the possible ways to work around this issue. And once you have all this information in hand and it's still not working, you can go to, let's say, a senior member of the team and ask, hi, this is not working, and I've tried certain steps to try to get it to work. So given all this information, they would be able to pinpoint you to a alternate solution which you may not have tried yet. And this improves the clarity for everyone. This just reiterates the communication concept that I was talking about. Yeah. Finally, a few more points here, that debugging or stepping in temporarily to a task can be beneficial. And what I mean by this is that sometimes you need to help your colleague debug an issue of his or hers. Sometimes a colleague is not available and you need to do their task because there's a deadline. And this might seem tough, but actually you get to learn a lot also, and this is how your improvement of product knowledge continues onwards in these unexpected situations. That's another thing. And obviously your team leads, your team leads and your senior software engineers, they have been in the workflow for a lot longer than you have. So they can offer you understanding of how the team works, what are the best practices while coding, while reviewing your, now if you have to do a code review, you understand how good code is written because of the previous reviews which were taken by our leads. So that knowledge is essentially passed on there. And you will notice that eventually once you step into their shoes, that you understand how to best write a product, to create a product in the long term, and the code maintainability part. So that's something that I really feel that you should imbibe from your seniors. And finally, yes, coding is collaborative. I know I said that everyone has their own work to do, but essentially we do come together and we are making a single product, which is the sum of its parts. So essentially, yes, it is still about working together and learning from each other's experiences. Yeah. Now, here, yes, mistakes happen and I want to acknowledge them. Let me tell you about a few issues. Like once I was working on a technology called protocol buffers, and we were implementing a new enhancement. And there were several, so based on my implementation, there were a few issues which were occurring and the QA team had raised them. Now, the typical workflow is that the QA team passes them to their lead, who passes it to the dev team lead, who passes the ticket to me. But I was eager, I wanted to fix the issue. So I just assigned the issue directly to myself. And that breaks the flow because then my team lead is not aware of the issue. I have just simply taken the issue to myself. So I was not used to this workflow and I just did that. And then, that caused confusion for a lot of people. So this is a mistake which I have been very cognizant of since then. I'm very careful to not let that happen and try to follow the proper workflow. But you can see how in my eagerness, I kind of broke the workflow. So yes, it does take time to get used to. Then after that, another thing is about not reinventing the wheel. At one time, I had written an entire UI class for something that was already available in the software. I had a table to implement, and I had to implement an auto sort on the column, and I was clicking the column, like sort ascending, descending. But it was already implemented, and I had spent nearly 3 days implementing that. So it is good for me that it was working, but I could have just used the existing implementation and saved time. So once again here, yes, communication comes into play. I should have talked to my senior at the time. I should have clarified that I'm trying to implement this. And yes, as he did later, he would have clarified to me that, Angad, this is already available. Why don't you just use that? Yeah. So that's something which you can work on, and mistakes happen, and that's how you learn. But the important thing is to not let them keep happening. You're very aware of them, then you'll not let them happen. And yeah, you should take ownership of your task, because there's good. The good is when your product releases, there's no issues in production and the client's happy with it. But there's also the bad where there could be issues even once it's out in production, and then how you react to it and how you deliver a solution is what is important, not the fact that an issue was up for discussion. Yeah. So finally, now we're coming to the end here. I would like to talk about getting out of a comfort zone. So in my first year at Volante, I worked closely with one of our seniors. He had been at Volante for nearly 7 years. He was a senior software lead in the team. We worked extensively on a vast number of tasks together. But eventually, he got an offer. He got another opportunity from another company, and he was seeking to try new challenges. So he announced he was leaving the company. And when a developer leaves the company, they do have this thing called KT, knowledge transfer sessions, where they give you sessions about understanding how a particular part of the code base works, what the key functionalities are, what the source code looks like, how it is structured, classes, interfaces, etc. But the problem is KT sessions are essentially 2 to 3 weeks, and beyond that point, the safety wheels are off, and you need to do things yourself. So I must admit, it was quite a challenge for me. Once he was gone, I did not have him to refer back to, and some of his responsibilities had come on to me. But I do see now in the long run that actually benefited me, and some of the things that I learned from him, the way he used to work, I have also imbibed some of that. So I noticed I do my tasks in a much more organized way now, thanks to him. So essentially, people come and go, but that's what I'm saying, that's the sort of learning you can take from people while they're there, while you're working as colleagues. And secondly, now I see that the last 2-3 months we got a few new members of our team, and I've been told to guide them around. And I see that yet again, I've been given the opportunity to impart them good knowledge, that their onboarding into the team is smooth, so that they understand the code base, and so that they can actually hit the ground running, as I mentioned before. So the growth that I experienced wouldn't have been possible in a vacuum. If there was no stimuli to really change my environment, to affect me in any way, I would have just sat in my comfort zone the whole time and not improved in any way. But I really do say that these factors challenged me. I did face adversity, but as of today, I feel good that these things have happened, because I wouldn't have grown otherwise. So this is about my mentality which you should try to keep. You're here for the long term, not the short term. And every day at work is a new learning opportunity. So you need to keep an open mindset. You don't need to be like, I am an expert at this only, I should only do this, because the role could call for you to do much more than that. You don't just be a developer, you could also be a manager, you could also be a tester. So just be open to that. And secondly, that as I have seen in my own experience, what I have done before has inspired me to do better in the future. And when I have realized that I have resolved an issue or implemented a feature which I knew nothing about previously, that really inspires me that I'll be able to do something new in the future as well, with or without knowing much about it before. I know I'll be able to put in the effort. And given the fact that today we have hustle culture, we have the thing that we have to work every day, work hard, sacrifice everything else. We often forget to take a step and just look back and have some appreciation for the work that we've done before, because even in college, you're not sitting free. You have exams, you have assignments, you have clubs, you have everything going on. So in this race, we just usually forget to take a step back and breathe for a bit. So I feel like more recently, I've also been trying to appreciate the work I've done and the hard work. So these are a few final thoughts from my end. I do feel like your job changes. Your job changes every month, every year, but somehow it also stays the same. And the reason here is that you are improving as well. As the tasks get harder, we get smarter. And there is a rhythm to things over here, but the importance is that you are also growing to shoulder those responsibilities. So therefore, the job, in my opinion, almost feels the same till today. Like, I don't feel very different from when I was an intern. It's only when I look back that I realize how much it changed. And ahead of this, yes, keep working on your core concept, what you're in college and what you're learning on right now. Please, whether it's the theory exam or the practical, try, if it interests you, please try to dive in and understand how it works, because that will help you debug an issue 2 years from now once you're out in the field. So that will really save you time one day. And in your own time, try to learn new concepts and technologies. If you are sure that you like this field, you like the field of computer science, then this is the only way to actually drill down on what you want to work on in the long term. Because you could have a great job, you could have a great company, everything, but if you feel like your aptitude lies elsewhere, then that's where you'll want to gravitate to anyway. So why not start today? That's the thing. And finally, yes, time is a key resource. It's the team's time. It's your time. You should respect it. You should communicate well, and so that the team's workflow moves forward in a smooth manner. But at the same time, yes, keep trying to learn as well. Keep trying to learn what others are doing as well. So that's how you progress in the team progress. Yeah. And finally, yes, there are both good and bad days, and this whole process takes time. This is something which I'm telling you after 2 years, and I can only imagine once again after 10 years what my perspective will be on this. So I really recommend that you take it easy and give yourself time and be patient with yourself. Yes. And I'm pretty sure all of you will make it. If I could make it, you can make it. That's what I say. So yes, that's all from me, guys. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope some of this was useful to you, and I'm open to any questions. Open to any questions.
Yes, thank you, Angad. You have got a few questions. Swapnil, can you please go through that questions?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sir, the first question is from Pradipta Nandi. He wants to know how competitive is your job currently?
Hi, Pradipta. Yeah. Well, I would say my job is fairly competitive. I mean, I have so essentially in the year we do have reviews. Okay, we have performance reviews, and these are self-appraisal. Essentially, you assess the work you've done, the effort you put in, whether you have met your deadlines, whether you have delivered a quality deliverable at the end of your year, and this is reviewed upon by your current lead, your mentor, your team lead, and even their superior. So it is I like in the first year, I feel like the pressure is not as high maybe in the first year, especially when you've just joined, because people understand that you need to get used to the code base, you need to get used to the workflow. But I did observe that towards my, as soon as I hit the 1 year point or so, people did expect that I would understand how things work. I would be ready to take on more responsibility. And now hitting the 2 year point, I'm seeing it definitely amping up. I'll be very honest. I was the first 6 months, I used to have very little work to do. And now I think about it, I'm busy the whole day. So, and in that sense, yeah, there is a difference. There is a different path for you if you work hard at it and you show promise. That's what the management and so on look for it, if I am being honest. So yeah, it is pretty competitive, and out there it is pretty competitive anyway. If you try to go get a job also, an SD role at any company, there are thousands of candidates vying for the same job. So yeah, the software engineering field is not exactly all flowers and roses every day, but if you enjoy the challenge, that's what you take up in the school. Yeah, we can go to the next one.
Sir, Saptoshi Nag wants to know what is the future of the role that you're currently working in. Like if there's any ladder, what are the ranks that you can climb? And also he wants to know how difficult is it to adjust with the new technical trends that emerge in your domain.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Saptoshi. So the future of the role now, Volante designer, the product which I mentioned, it is a desktop application as of now. It is a Java Swing based application, and it has been so since the late 2000s, 2005, 2006 onwards. However, as of right now, actually, as of July 22, we are moving on to designer on cloud. So firstly, the product itself is changing. We are offering a low-code, no-code implementation of it, so that someone who is not very technically oriented also can use key functionalities of the software just at an endpoint available online. And so yes, essentially our product is changing, so there will be a few challenges coming this year. I also look forward to that, by the way. In the later half of this year, things are going to change. And adjusting the new technical trends, yes, Saptoshi. Now, see, this is something that if you recognize that yes, my product is changing or my role is changing, my requirements are changing, it's a good idea to upskill. And there is no time where you should say, at least in my opinion, there's no time you should say that I'm going to stop learning. I'm not going to do anything beyond this point, because the industry is moving very fast and is moving ahead at the speed of light. So you must do it. Like, it's good to take some time off, maybe on the weekends or maybe some days after work, to try to understand what else is going on, try to follow through, try to code a little bit after work, so that you are in touch with something else which could pop up at work as well. So, and another way to understand this is, obviously, now I must clarify here that your team leads and your superiors are aware of the challenges coming up ahead much more than you are, because they're aware of long-term roadmaps. So it's actually appreciated if you go ahead and say, how can I contribute to the team? What can I learn to future-proof myself in terms of being able to help the team essentially. So it's a long process once again, but you can be aware of it and start preparing well in time. So yeah, so the product always changes. That's what we should.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So next question is from Rohan Rai. He wants to know, how did you deal with the change that you experienced when you graduated from the university and started working in the industry? Like your whole lifestyle must have changed in that process. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah. Rohan, so yeah, I have good news for you actually. See, so I feel like in college, you know, you have CT1, CT2, CT3, you have model exam, you have university exam, you have labs going on, assignments, records, you know, all of that. And you have even like, it's basically homework at the end of the day also. I have noticed now after 2 years, I'm telling you that my job is, let's say, 9 to 6 or 9 to 5 or so. After that, I am free to do my own thing. So in terms of lifestyle, I do enjoy the fact that those hours are fixed for work, yes, but after that, it is my own time. So I really enjoy that. Secondly, getting used to being in the company, getting used to being in the working environment, it is intimidating because, you know, it's just completely new to you. You've never worked before. But I do see now that it's pretty novel. Everyone's coming there to, you know, contribute to the product in question. So don't let yourself get too intimidated by it. Just say that I'm going to give myself time. I'm going to get used to the workflow, and I'm going to do my best. That's it. Otherwise, yes, I understand that the environment change is quite a bit, and suddenly you are on your own and you're doing a task which you may not have worked on before. But the key point here is to just be patient and say that I'll get used to it, and there are certain benefits as you will see once you start working. But right now, for now, you're still in college. Please enjoy college and make the most of this time. That will come, and when it comes, you will, I'm sure, you, like everyone else, will get to working and you'll take on all this responsibilities.
Thank you, sir, for answering all the questions. The chat is open to everyone. If anyone has any more questions to ask, they can post right now.
I'll just drop my email in the chat. If anyone wants to reach out later on. All right, Swapnil, I think.
Yes, I think that's it. Thank you, sir, for giving the presentation. I believe the presentation must have been useful for a lot of students here, especially about the topics that you covered, like the fallacy of student mindset and lessons that you have learned. And one key point that the coding is collaborative. I believe these all lessons and these all points would have been very helpful for our students. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Moving on to our next chief guest, I now invite Mr. Vatsal Roop. He is a senior analyst at Goldman Sachs. He has 2 years of experience working in investment banking industry and has a bachelor's degree in computer science engineering from VIT Vellore. He has expertise on topics such as global markets, financial reporting, financial regulation, and corporate finance in limited time frame. Now I would like Mr. Vatsal Roop to comprehend the audience with his intellects.
Thanks,
Over
Vikra.
to you, sir.
Thanks, Vikra. Hi, everyone. Hope you are doing well. I would first like to extend my thanks to the chapter, the faculty coordinators, and the student coordinators for organizing this such a beautiful event online as well. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when it's visible. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to be taking the session on industry work culture as the theme of the entire session goes on. I have a lot of information to share with you all, information, experiences, stories of my time here at the GS as well. But having said that, I would like to keep this open, keep this interactive, right? So whenever anyone has any things to share, please feel free to pitch in and share your ideas and thoughts as well. before that, a bit about me. So you all know my name by now, but can anybody guess what I do? Yes, I know you guys shared a brief background about me, but a little more detail into it. So can anybody from the audience guess which movie this picture is taken from? The picture on the left-hand side of the screen. Anybody?
And
Is it the
answer
Big
here in
Short?
the chat box.
Sorry, I can't read my chat box, I think, because I'm sharing screen. Can anybody spell it out?
Is it the Big Short?
Nope. I mean, the movie is similar, but it's not the Big Short. Anybody? It's a very famous movie. I know. I hope all of you know the actor, but I would like to know the name of him.
I guess it's the Wolf of the Wall Street, I guess.
Yes, that's correct. It's taken from a very famous movie known as Wolf of Wall Street, which was based on the life of one investment banker known as Jordan Belfort. How did he become big and then had a drastic fall from his fame as well? A little bit like we had a scam 1992 movie in India, right? Or a web series rather. So just around that, but a horror movie. Right. So this movie, Jordan Belfort, Leonardo DiCaprio is the actor's name. What he does in the movie, the work he does in the movie is basically what I do in my real life as well. The only difference is we don't party as much as they are in the movie, so we don't do that. But work-wise, work perspective, it's all the same, right? So I work in the financial services industry. As I already mentioned, that I work with Goldman Sachs. I don't know how many of you know it, but it's one of the largest investment banks in the world, based out of New York, Wall Street, of course. And I work within the space of global markets. Anybody, any idea what global markets, stock markets are? Like, how do stock markets work? I don't want to go into the details of it because that's out of scope of this entire presentation, but just a brief idea about it. Come on, people, you need to speak up. There will be marks for it at the end of this session.
Vatsal, can I participate or should we?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, you can do it.
Yeah, so I mean, to my understanding, essentially, when a company offers shares to the public and they want to trade on the public market, then they do share. Like the share essentially is a part of the company, a small holding of the company, which they offer for people to buy and sell on the stock market. And well, yeah, people trade this, and there are highs and lows, and there's certain times of the day you can trade these things. So that's my understanding. It's a limited one.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's good. So what happens on a stock exchange? So for example, in India, we have these, you might have heard the names NSE and BSE, right? National Stock Exchange of India, Bombay Stock Exchange, and so on. You're the Financial Times Exchange in London, and every country has an exchange. What happens? Shares move around. So for example, share, as Ms. Angad rightly mentioned, is a part of the company. So if let's say there's a company, let's as in Reliance, and it has 100 rupees, so it can offer 10 shares of 10 rupees each, right? And those shares, I can buy it from Reliance, I can sell it to anybody, they can buy it from me, and so on. So those movements happen on a stock exchange. Again, I'm like simplifying it to as much extent as I can, but that's essentially what happens in a stock exchange. Now let's say the stock price is 10 today, I buy it, it goes to 11 tomorrow. So, and I sell it, so I make 1 rupee from that because I bought it at 10 and I sell it at 11, right? So I make 1 rupee profit. If it goes down to 9 tomorrow, I make a loss of 1 rupee, right? And if we have, let's say, 5 shares, so you have a loss or a profit of 5 rupee if the price fluctuates by 1 rupee each, right? So that's basically how the stock markets function, how they flow in there. So this is what we do. We buy shares, sell them, not just shares. It's a very simplified product. You have multiple different things on, right? It goes to a lot of complexity that I'm not covering here. So that those are the stock markets. Stock markets. So in India, we have NSE, PSE, one stock market. You extend this to the entire world, or let's say in the entire Asia, that becomes a global market. Asian markets, European markets, American markets, and so on. So those are known as global markets, right? So I work within that space. More specifically, if you have to dive deeper into it, is within the work of financial regulatory reporting. So for every country has their own financial laws that everyone has to adhere to, and there are specific entities or bodies that the government of that country gives responsibility to ensure that that is being followed. For example, in India, we have SEBI, Securities Exchanges Board of India, and you have the Feds in US, and every country has that, right? So every institution, every bank like ours needs to also adhere to certain principles, certain rules, and report certain data, give certain data to those regulators and the government, so that they can ensure that everything is going right, right? So for example, in 2008, I don't know how many of you knew it back then, I did not, but we had a global financial market crisis where every stock exchange, a lot of companies went bankrupt, they lost money, right? Everybody lost their jobs and all. That was because certain regulations were not adhered to. And when it came up that, okay, this is wrong, this is not how it should happen, a lot of people lost money. And not just money, they lost their homes, they lost their jobs, and so on. Hence, it's important to stick to the regulations now. Daily work, as you can see on the screen, it's meetings, making money, and more meetings. Making money not for me, no, but for the company. I just get my small peanut salary, that's it. But it's making money for the company. That is what the part is, right? Meetings, lots of meetings with everyone, not just within the team that we have here in India, but globally, right? Because when India is sleeping, US is awake. Their markets are working, and vice versa. So every time, everybody has to make money. That's the principle within the financial services industry. Come to my educational background. Yes, I am a computer science engineer, but the work I do here is what I've already told you within the finance space, and not engineering work. I do not code. I do code, but that's just because I like to code, not because I'm required to code, right? So, and how do I end up here? It's a combination of my own skills that I learned on my own when I was doing my engineering, and some personal interest as well. What skills we'll cover later in the presentation. Right, coming on to the main topic, the work culture, right? The big word. There are lots of other terms that revolve around it. For example, organization culture, team principles, etc. But this work culture is the over-encompassing, the thought, the idea that covers everything. Right. So, anybody wants to take a guess what work culture is? What do you mean by work culture? Any student this time, current student.
I think by work culture, I mean how the organization wants its employees to interact with each other, how it divides its team, how they work, what procedures would they follow, the free hours that they would get, and everything related with that whole timetable, or if I can say it as a timetable in the first place. So everything like timetable, I guess also the leaves that they are allowed to get, paid leaves that they are allowed to get, benefits that they would have. I guess these all aspects can be considered as a part of work culture.
Yes, that's correct. I wouldn't say that is wrong. That is correct, but that's half the answer, not the correct one. Anybody else? All right, I'll go ahead. So I'll take that. So as Swapnil rightly mentioned, right, how the organization, any company is divided, right, how it flows down. So let's say you have a big company of 1,000 people, but not all 1,000 people will be working together. You'll have divisions within them of, let's say, 100 people each. Every division will be subdivided into subdivisions, and then teams that trickle down into like sub teams or teams of 10 people each, or 5 or 15 people each, depending what the nature of work, right? That is a part of it, but also a part of it is how many leaves you get, right? How many hours you are required to work every single day. That is also a part of work culture. You might have heard terms like we work hard and we party harder, right? That is a part of work culture. That is also work culture, right? So I've got a few definitions here. If anybody of is interested, you can go through this. You can read that on my presentation. But I'm not going to cover these definitions. We wasn't doing that. I'm just going to cover what this means, right? So imagine some scenarios, right? You're working in an organization. You're doing your work well. You were asked to perform certain tasks. You did that within the deadline. Everything's perfect, 100% accuracy, deadlines met, everything. But when it comes to communicating that to your senior managers, right? Your manager's manager, people with, let's say, 30 years of experience, your name is not there in the emails, right? That is a part of work culture, a negative work culture, but still a part of work culture. On the other hand, if your name is on the emails, right? Within our organization, we have certain, we know, call them JIRAs, JIRA. It's an acronym. Don't ask me the full form of that. But these are certain tech tickets. Some project is happening, so you create a ticket, you log details onto that, and that is used for tracking and progress purposes, right? So you do all the work, but your name is not there on that JIRA or ticket or emails, whatever. That is a part of work culture, right? As I've already mentioned, how many hours you're required to work. Your, let's say, your contract letter or your offer letter says you're required to work 8 hours a day, but in fact you're working 12 hours a day without getting appreciated for that. It says, let's say you're not required to work on weekends, but you are working on weekends without getting appreciation for that. Forget about getting paid for working over hours. That is a part of work culture, right? Not everything is bad, everything is good as well. Work-life balance, right? Again, the weekends, the partying and all that. You need to have a good work-life balance. Yes, we are in the earlier phases of our lives, Angad and I. So we want to work more. We want to create our names within the respective domains that we are in. But as you grow older, as you move ahead, you need to give time to your family, to your friends as well. That is when the work-life balance comes in picture more. So if you are working for some hours, you have to work all those hours, but you should not be required to work after that, right? So another aspect like feedback, for example. So within our system, we have annual feedback cycle. So as Mr. Angad mentioned that in his organization, it's a own feedback. Like you give your own feedback, how much you have worked, how much you have delivered, etc. Within our system, it's a peer review. So you select your peers who you have worked with throughout the year. They give your feedback. Then your manager gives your feedback, and it's a process. Your peers need not be from your team. So as I mentioned, it's a global markets team. So we work with people who are from, so I'm working out of Bangalore in India, but we have sister teams who are working from like Singapore, London, New York, Dallas, etc. So you can ask those people to give you feedback as well. If you're working on some non-functional assignment, let's say I'm organizing some cultural festival within the organization, and I work with those people for let's say a month, I can ask them to give me a feedback as well. That is also part of the work culture. Everything comes into this, right? There are certain elements to it that you can see on the screen right now. I've listed 5. It's not, these 5 elements do not account to 100% of what the work culture is, but as I've already covered, right? Recognition. You're getting the recognition for the work that you have done. Communication, another important aspect. The feedback cycle happens only once in a year or once in, let's say, 6 months or whatever the period is. But you need to have your communication lines open with your managers, with your managers, with your peers, even your seniors in the team. You need to have a periodic review. By periodic, I mean very short periodic review, a weekly or a monthly, when you just join the organization, because you need to know how you're working. Are there any improvements to be done? What are the areas that you're working well on? What next? What projects are next line up for you? So you need to have those communication lines open with. Expression is part of communication, but expression is you expressing what you need to work on. How you're feeling in the team. Are you facing some challenges in the team? Challenges could be both that you're not understanding the work, or you have some challenges with people perspective. It could be both. Equity here means not the stock market equity, but equity means that everybody is treated equally, right? That your senior in the team and you, if we have both worked on a project, let's say for equal hours, given equal input, you should get the equal recognition. It should not be that he gets to take all the credit because he is senior. He has been there for longer years than we have. Accountability, if anything goes wrong, you have to be accountable. Everything is for the good and for the bad. You need to put your hands up, say that yes, I did it bad, I'll need to correct it, and you need to get it done. Right? All right. That is work culture. Workspace challenges, right? As you can see on the slide, with power comes responsibility. This is a famous dialogue from a very famous movie. I've added and challenges. Any guesses by the which movie that the dialogue comes from? With power comes responsibility.
Spider-Man.
Okay, that was the easy one. I shouldn't have asked that. Okay, but before moving here, before going ahead with workspace challenges, I'm sure that every phase of life has its own set of challenges, right? So can anybody in the audience give me what challenges you all face in college? I know the answer to that question because I've been through college as well, but I would like to hear. I would like to hear from the younger generation.
One challenge that I would like to point out, I think everyone student here could relate to that challenge, is that keeping up with all the internal tests that we have, keeping up with all the assignments that we have, keeping up with all the lab work we have to do every week. Keeping up with all these things, even studying for the internals exam because they carries internal marks. As far as 50% of it is an internal marks. I guess Angad sir can also relate to it. He's also ex-SRMIT, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, that is one challenge I would like to point out. And then there are some, I guess, challenges that living in hostel you must have experienced yourself. I guess everyone present in the meet has experienced or is experiencing the challenges that you have that you faced when you live in hostel, then especially not to mention the infamous hostel food and all. So yeah, those are
Another
the few.
challenge would be of making choices. We got to make choices if to choose higher studies or sit for placements or do internships or research projects. So, making choices is also one of the challenges as a student, especially after we reach this point, like at the end of second year and the third years, the critical period of our career, and it's it's a little confusing to make choices at this point.
Yes, I've been there, done that, faced that, so I can totally relate with that. Well, if you ask me, the greatest challenge of college life was attendance. It was it was a nightmare, I think, for most of us, and still is. Right, right. Great answers, Swapnil. Uh, those are the challenges that you face in colleges, right? But challenges just keep on happening. Right? You face some now, you'll face some later on. You might have faced some in, like, say, your school life as well. But what I would like to say to the audience is just rename the word challenges to opportunities. Every challenge is a new opportunity to do something, to learn something new about you, to learn something new about the world, to explore yourself more, right? Just replace that word. Just replace that word in your mindset and just see the world change around you, right? Coming back from psychology to this topic, workspace challenges. So so I don't think we can generalize broad broad concept as workspace challenges because every organization, every industry, every domain has its own set of challenges, right? As Mr. Alvin mentioned that in his domain, the challenge is to keep up with the latest technologies that are coming in, right? So let's say if we were working on Java some time ago, then Python came, then something else came. I don't know what is happening in the industry right now, software industry right now, but something newer than Python definitely, right? And that will change in 6 months from now, before you all graduate office, right? That it doesn't apply in our industry. The challenge in the industry is more on a daily basis, right? Every global event that happens, the prices go up, down. It's a challenge. What you thought will go up yesterday has gone down, and you lost money, right? So that is it. So every industry has its own set of challenges. If let's say you are a cricketer, right? You're a sports person. The challenge with you is to keep your body fit, right? To have your good eye-hand combination. Everything has a different challenge, right? But still, if so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to classify them on different parameters, but on a very broad level, right? I'm not going to go into the details or the specifics of every domain because that's just that cannot happen within the time that we have, right? So first classification is based on expected or unexpected challenges, right? Something that you know you are going to face, as Yukta mentioned, right? That all of you are going to face the challenge of going for higher studies, with job, what kind of job, a technical job or a non-technical job. Within non-technical, you have finance jobs, consulting jobs, etc., etc. Right? So these are expected challenges. You know that you are going to face them. Some are just unexpected challenges. As the unexpected, I cannot list them out right now, right? So going into this, the first, like some of them, the first expected challenge can be when you are just joining a team and then just working in an organization, it is integrating into the team, right? You join a new company, you join a new firm, a new division, completely new team. You have a team of, let's say, 15 members. The first thing is to getting to know into them, getting to fit into them, right? The first few days, they all know each other from the previous times, but you are just there. So you're just getting to know how it goes around. Even if you have a joke in mind, you don't know whether you should make that or not. It's as simple, as primitive as that, right? Because you have those questions in mind, right? I would just like to share one example from the last week, this recently that we had. We had one intern joining into the team who has a disability. He has motor disability, so he's on a wheelchair. He cannot move his legs and arms around. He can just move his fingers so he can work on a keyboard or laptop, a mouse, etc. This is a person that all of us in the team have got the opportunity to interact with someone with who's specially able, right? But this week has been so much fun for us, just talking to him, right? Just talking to him how his experiences have been, how he's feeling here, just helping him get into the team. Don't make him feel not a part of the team or as a new mind. And that goes with everybody. I remember my experience when I joined here, then as a full-time graduate, how my seniors were. Another example that I would like to share here is, so when I was an intern here, right? So we have a team of 15 members here. So we have 15 desks, right? For some reason, on one particular day, within the first or second week of my internship, there were not enough seats around because other teams also moved into our space, right? So as everyone was here, I moved to a different place, which were a few feet away from my team. So my team was sitting in some place else, all of them, and I alone was sitting somewhere. One of the seniors in my team saw that, asked me to come within the team space and ask somebody else senior in the team to go. The reason being that even though I'm a first weekend, then I'm not contributing functionally, I'm not doing any work. But if I'm around people, I will get to know them. I'll get to talk to them, know how the work is done, how they are, right? That is again a part of work culture, and also one of the challenges that goes into integrating into it, right? Understanding the work, right? You do Java or Python in your college. When you go into a corporate environment, there are completely different processes, completely different solutions, completely different code languages or code platforms. You need to learn them, right? That is another challenge that we know that we are going to face. Nobody works in a NetBeans in companies. I'm assuming that, right? Nobody does, but we all used to do NetBeans when we were in college. Getting used to the company policies. A lot of companies have their own set of policies, very strict policies. If you work in the financial services industry sometime in the future, they are very, very strict because financial services is one of the most regulated domains in the world because of things that have happened in the past. And there are a lot of company policies. I cannot share a lot of details in here in this session because of those policies. And even for coming here, I had to get a lot of approvals from very senior people. That is how regulated, that is how the company policies are. And every company has its own policies. So whenever you get into a company, you need to know those policies, understand those policies, and follow them. If there are any questions, there are designated teams that help you understand those, and you can always reach out to them. Entering new domains, right? Social and cultural barriers. Again, I'm from Rajasthan, and I am working in Karnataka. So there are definitely cultural and social barriers, right? The food's different, the language is different, the weather is different, everything is different. I do not know more than 10 people when I came here. I'm not talking about the company people, right? Outside of work people. I am not more than 10 people here. Everything is a challenge. We need to adapt. Everybody does. But I'm making it sound maybe too difficult, but it is not, believe me. All of us have done that. All of you will do that. That's fine. I'm assuming that most of you are facing this a problem here in college as well. Like you are from different states studying in Tamil Nadu. So again, different culture, different food, and you all have adjusted back to that as well. Entering new domains, again, computer science engineer doing nothing remotely related to computer science, right? Working in a financial services domain, doing stock trading and all this. If you enter a new domain, because of the things that you want, again, you have to get up to speed with that. Unexpected challenges, new technological changes. You are working on something, you are in the middle of the project, some new technology comes into the market, somebody else, some other player in the market uses that, gets that done before, right? We have had those situations in the past. with different companies. Office infrastructure. So you have all these, any IT problems. So within GS, so we don't work on one laptop, right? We don't have one system. We have 4 monitors. So one monitor here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Every monitor has different sets of data. So one has a live stock chart going, prices fluctuate every single time. One has our emails, or one has a Bloomberg terminal. I'm just going into a bit of like definitions, don't worry about that. But all the 4 systems have different information displayed on them that we need to make our decisions and do different stuff, right? So you need to gather this. The first time I saw 4 monitors, I was like, what is this? If I look at the first monitor, I can't look at the 4th monitor at the same time. How do I get all this information at the same time, right? So you need to, every office has a different infrastructure. The seats that we had in the office were adjustable. It took me a week to figure out how to get the seat to my level, to where I'm comfortable, right? Small things. IT problems, Zoom problems, with the work from home scenario, the Zoom or Google Meet, whatever you use, has become the most critical part of our lives, apart from Facebook, Instagram, I will say. Cisco lines to call, in office, you have Cisco. People mobility, people moving out of the team. So we had one new person joining last year, I guess. And within the week of her joining, our manager moved out. Right? So understand the scenario, you are joining a team, you're joining an organization, and the person whom you are dependent on to the most has also just joined that same team or organization. So he or she is also as new as you are. So whom do you rely on? Right? Yes, so they are seniors for that. Yeah, there are other people for that. But some things like that, these can always happen. So you need to be ready for that as well. This is first classification. The next classification is based on technical or non-technical problems, right? Building subject matter expertise. For example, if you're building a software for, let's say, a banking system, just for an example, you need to have some understanding of how the banking system flows, how cash comes in, how they go out, how UPI works, or whatever, right? So you need to build some subject matter expertise within that topic. I'm not saying completely, because there are special subject matter experts on that work with the project teams just for that information, but developers, testers, etc. need to know some bit of it. Learning new program languages, work infrastructure, we have already covered. Emails, Microsoft Access, Office, files, folders. When I first was using Outlook, it was a nightmare for me. There's just so much functionality into it. I did not know how to do that. Just something as simple as setting up a meeting has so much features built into it. Even still, I do not know all the features that, let's say, MS Outlook has to offer, right? So as in when you need those things, you get to know that. Computer hardware, again, I've mentioned 4 systems, chairs, everything. Non-technical social integration of team, building a network. A network is something, a very buzzword that people in the college hear a lot, but I don't think understand a lot. I did not understand a lot the importance or the influence of a network. I certainly do now. Your network that you build within your college circles, your work circles, social circles is one of the most key and defining features of your life. It would open new doors for you. I would just simply put it like that. It would open new doors for you. It will give you opportunities. It will give you things that you did not dream about. Non-BU participation, things outside of work. So we work, as I mentioned, right, organizing a cultural, right, organizing some team building activity, all those things. On-site food and beverages. The food that we had in the previous office location was just horrible. Everybody had to bring their own foods or otherwise suffer from it. The complaint went in, now they have changed. So everything is good now, but a bit more expensive. So again, a trade-off. Very small things, right? Don't matter much, but you definitely don't want to have bad food every single day in office when you're working for 10 hours a day, right? So yeah. Those were the 2 classifications that I had. What I'm going to share is just one survey that was done recently by Papa based on COVID, right? So COVID changed the world entirely. Like once in a century kind of an event. All of us went back to home. We were studying from home, we were working from home. And hence the survey was on what was the biggest struggle that people worked while they were working remotely, as in not from their office locations, but from somewhere else. It could be home, it could be a farmhouse, it could be a pub, club, whatever. If that is open, by the way, right? So the biggest was unplugging from work. I face this too. Even if your work is 10 or 12 hours a day, just as an example, you tend to work more. Because let's say even if an email comes at 9 p.m. in the night, if you're in an office, you don't respond to that. But if you're working from home, you're expected to respond, right? So that becomes a challenge. Loneliness. Many people who were not staying with their families and were just staying alone in homes had no one to talk to because there was no one around. Everyone was inside, locked inside. Collaborating work, distractions at home, you're watching TV, you're watching a football, like a Champions League final game, and you're working at the same time. You are bound to make some mistakes, obviously. Being in a different time zones, that's something that we still face. Again, like New York people are sleeping, we are awake, we are sleeping, they are awake. Staying motivated, taking vacation time, all those things. So these are the first few, I guess. The first four are something that got increased because of COVID. They were still there, but in a very limited percentage. Tips to overcome some of these challenges, right? So as I mentioned, every challenge is an opportunity. The first one is expect the unexpected. Uncertainty is the only certainty that is there, right? These are some of the lessons that many people have learned the hard way. But if you can learn from others' mistakes, nothing better than that, right? So anything new that comes in, just take it on the chin, get on with it, right? Nothing, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a good. Like just think like that, and everything will be easy. Find mentors and buddies. Again, a very important thing. These will be your pillars of strength. These will be your pillars of information. These will be your pillars of guidance when you're working. I cannot emphasize the importance of this more here, right? Again, some of it is a part of the work culture. So, for example, in GS, we have a dedicated buddy assigned to everybody who joins, right? Yes, you have your managers and all, but those are more formal. So anybody who is just a few years older than you has joined the firm only a few years ago, who has been in the same place basically just a few years before you. So he or she can guide you through the dynamic. And I really had a lot of help in the body. I am the buddy of a few people out here, and I know how to help those people. I know what challenges that face, what could be their questions. So if your system, if your company has this system, has these processes in place, perfect. Otherwise, make your own buddies. Reach out to people. Reach out to students. Right? Learn on the go. Don't wait for people to teach you things. Right? Learn on your own. Go out. It's everything is available for free today online. You can learn anything. You can learn to make a rocket on the internet. You can learn to play a guitar online for free, right? Just go out there, learn on your own. Just Google it. You'll go into a rabbit hole of information from there, and it's just so easy to learn everything. Stay awake and stay aware, right? Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what's happening around you. Could be functional things, could be non-functional things, right? A lot of times information flows in from the grapevine. You need to be on that as well, and just plan, execute, and deliver. That's the only part of it, right? Whatever happens at the end of the day, your work speaks for itself. You can be in any organization, you can be in any domain, industry. If you work hard, it pays off. It pays off. Definitely it does. Right. Coming to the final part of my presentation, bonus information, right, about careers within my domain, careers within finance, because being in college, being in an engineering college, we all know what software companies are there: Microsoft, Google, Adobe, all of them. Like what careers are there? So we have SE1, 2, all those. But finance, we are not too much aware about, right? So just a bit of information on that. So the diagram that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, just some of the areas that you can work on: investment banking, asset management, corporate finance, etc. But just a general gist of it, the career in finance industry is dynamic and sync with the real world. Like everything happens in the real world. It affects the stock markets at the moment. Everything goes up and down, right? For example, PM Modi comes on the television and he says withdraw, and the stock markets go up or down. Your day is good. You are logging out from work at, let's say, 6 p.m. in the evening. You have to work till 11 in the night, right? Russia goes to war with Ukraine. Your day is done. You have to work longer. India reaches a World Cup final, for example, right? You have to work longer hours. Anything that happens in the real world, it has an impact on your day as a finance professional every single day, every single hour. So you have to be ready every single hour. It happens once. It happened once with me. I was working here. I was just going to log out. I was just sending the final email of my day at 6, I was very happy. I had plans for the night. And something happened in the US. Donald Trump did something. And I was like, damn, what now? I had to cancel all my plans and just get on with it. Right? This is the beauty of it. This is why I like this career the most. Right? It will challenge you. It will challenge you in different domains. Like, even though nothing is happening in the real world, you need to make decisions, right? Because there's one line in this same movie called Wall Street, right? That nobody knows what a stock is going to do, whether it's going to go up, down, roll sideways. Nobody knows that, right? We tend to pretend that we know what it is going to do. I'm wearing a suit and everything to go work. I tend to pretend, but nobody knows. It's just predictions based on some financial analysis or modeling that you've done, right? Nobody knows. It could do the complete reverse of what you've predicted, right? So how much? So let's say you're predicting 10 times. If it's correct 7 or 8 times, you're done. You make profit 7 times, you lose 3 times, your net is profit, you're done. So it will challenge. But if it goes reverse, you end up losing a lot of money, you end up losing a lot of clients, losing a lot of business, which is obviously not good, right? Career in finance is, excuse me, it improves the interpersonal skills. What I mean by that is, as an example, on a daily basis, I have to connect with people from Singapore, Warsaw, which is in Poland, Europe, London, 3, New York, on a daily basis. So in the mornings I'm connecting with people who are of Chinese or a Japanese origin, decent. So they have those culture, their own way of speaking and their own way of thinking. In the night I'm talking with people from New York or a Dallas, right? So within the day I cover the entire horizon, right, from east to west and everything in the middle, right? So that improves your interpersonal skills as well. I talk to interns who are just 1 or 2 weeks old within their careers. And in the same day, I talk to managing directors who have had, let's say, 30 years of experience, right? So the way you present the same information, you teach or train the same information to an intern is completely different on how you present that information to a managing director or a partner, right? The details vary. The project is the same, but the details vary. The way you present those things vary. Everything you have to manage in a single day, for example, right? That is how you learn and improve. It doesn't come on the first day, but the more you do it, the more of it will come. Fast-paced, interconnected, and extremely high-level learning curve, already covered. You can become a very, very senior. So the hierarchy was like you have analysts, senior analysts, level 1 and 2. I'm starting from the junior to the senior most. Analysts, senior analysts, associates 3, VP 4, vice president. Then you have managing directors 5 and partners. So within these 6 levels, you have covered the entire hierarchy from an intern to a CEO or a CFO level, right? You can become a managing director at Goldman Sachs in 15 years. You have partners at GS last week who are 35 years of age. I don't think there are many careers out there who have as high learning curve and growth curve as the financial services industry has. Multiple opportunities, as you can see on the right hand side of the screen, different areas that you will work on. Some skills that are needed, as I said, I'm an engineer, but working within the financial services domain. How did this happen? Right. Obviously, I got the opportunity with GS when there was the financial space, but I also needed to have some skills that I had to develop on my own. First is quant. You need to be good at math. By math, I don't mean calculus. I don't mean trigonometry. No, just basic numbers. What is 13 times 7? Right? What will we get if you divide 23.7 by 5? 23.5 is, let's say, the share price of a stock. 5 is the number of shares that we're going to buy. Divide what is the per share price. Just that, the basic math, basic quant, right? Analytical thinking, right? You have lots of data to come in. You have numbers popping up on a screen every single time. 4 screens, not 1. Again, remember that, right? You need to think logically. You need to be focused. You need to be concentrated, and you need to think analytically. If I'm getting one data here, if I'm getting second one here, if I join them, what does it mean? You need to make that analysis, and it has to be right most of the time. Financial modeling, it's a bit more technical, like reading balance sheets, reading financial statements, right? P&L, income statement, etc. So bit of technical knowledge needed there, yes, something that they teach in other courses. But if you have a bit of a knowledge, that's good. Speed and efficiency. You need to be accurate, and you need to think on your feet fast. if we take 10 seconds to get 103 by 4, by the time you get the number, it's no longer 103, it is 107 now, right? So you need to be speed. It's not this in calculation. I'm just using that as a very primitive, very basic example. You need to have speed in your thinking, in your making decisions. That is the most important thing. And lots and lots of things, right? With that, I have finally come to the end of my presentation, and I'll open it up for Q&A. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. We have a few questions for you. The first one is from Vaibhav.